Cool. I mean, we'll only run out of time if everybody gets really interested and excited and, you know,
oh, well, that
couldn't possibly happen.
That couldn't possibly happen.
My general presentation won't run us out of time.
Right. Okay. Well, why don't we get started with that? Wayne, you want to go ahead and start recording, and we'll just we'll just do the kind of round robin here and see what everybody's up to. Does anybody want to volunteer to go first and just talk about what you're working on nowadays?
I will, Jim. This is Jim.
Okay.
I'm semi-retired, and so I do things sometimes on the side and stuff. I developed something for a friend to help keep track of his growing archaic toy collection, and I belong to LegalZoom for like $25 a month, and I copy if you belong to LegalZoom for that amount, then it's only $35 to run the copyright, and yet you're allowed one copyright per month, which is a pretty reasonable charge.
Whoop, did we lose you there, Jim?
I'm still here. No one commented. I said, but if you ever have to copyright something, go through LegalZoom, and it's like, say, I think I pay like $25 a month or something like that.
Oh, wow.
Pardon?
I said, oh, wow, that sounds like a reasonable price.
It's very reasonable, and then when I copyrighted the system that I designed for the guy, it only cost me $35. And what I did is I have a user guide with all the screens and stuff like that and write up. I give him a copy of that, and then I give a copy of the scripts behind the scene.
Oh, cool.
So I have a couple other things that I copyrighted a couple of years ago, and it's a fairly straightforward process, but it takes a while. I'll probably hear from him in 2 or 3 months, you know?
Yeah. All right. What's everybody else working on nowadays? We haven't talked in a month. We've certainly done something, right?
Hey, it's Dave.
Hey, Dave.
I'm winding up my case management system for the good folks in the court up in Newport Richey. It's going to go live probably week after next. The final user testing's in place, and that's going to be my last hurrah before I retire in June.
Cool. Getting ready to retire, are you?
Yes, I am.
Oh, congratulations. Can you sneak me out with you?
I don't know
awesome.
if sneaking is going to work, but hey, I'll give it a try.
Right.
You don't want to retire. You get bored.
Oh, I'm going to keep my hand in it. I just won't have to take orders from other people. That's the good thing.
Oh, there you go.
Amen to that one.
So I've been doing a lot of work with actually Wayne and I have been doing a lot of work with a turnquote system for a property management company. It's been interesting. We have property management is where you own a house and you give it over to the property management company to make sure it stays rented and, you know, make sure all the repairs are kept up and sort of that sort of thing. Basically managing your house and keeping it profitable. And so they have this whole procedure where they send somebody out with a tablet, just recently converted them to iPads. And this is after a tenant has moved out. They send somebody out to do what's called a turnquote and determine all the things that need to be fixed in the house. And then internally in the office, they have to do all this communication with the homeowner and the various vendors to make sure that, you know, all the work gets approved and work gets assigned to vendors. And some people internally get sent out with work orders to work on it, and really it's a pretty involved process. So it's been interesting. We've been kind of taken stabs at it for a while, and it's a small part of a much larger system, and it's finally starting to take shape and starting to get rid of a lot of paperwork, a lot of phone calls, a lot of emails back and forth. You know, they're getting to manage this a little more coherently. But that's kind of what I've been working on. Like I said, Wayne's been working on it with me. And Jason, you want to say a few words about HME, about that project? That was pretty interesting.
Yeah, okay.
Here, let me put you on the spot, Jason.
Right, who are they again? No, okay. A really short project. Our last month's meeting was about the quote 10-hour project. And this one I think was aside from not being 10 hours, it was like, I don't know, it was probably right around 30 hours on it. But it was exactly what he was talking about. It was this great short project where folks came in, needed a little management system for managing their credentialing process. I guess they're an engineering firm, and each of the engineers has to maintain, licenses and certifications and registrations in like all the different municipalities where they operate, across state lines and things like that. So they just end up with this giant paperwork mess where they've got, each one of the engineers needing to have each of these different certifications that are all needing to be renewed on different, on different schedules, and each certification has different renewal requirements. Like you have to go to, continuing education classes, and each one has specific categories that you have of continuing education credit that you have to get in certain amounts of time. And so you can hear all these things kind of piling up, and you can imagine the hassle of dealing with one, but they have many engineers in the firm. So they came to us with the need for the solution to just kind of help them keep track of all that, kind of tell them, hey, who needs to do what when, and give us some notice so we can get this stuff done ahead of time and not be scrambling constantly and letting things lapse and all that kind of thing. So like I said, really neat little project. The requirements were nice and clean and easy, and we just got in and out of there in that, just in that kind of 20 to 30 hour range. And it was just really, a great example of how FileMaker can help a company do something really profound, something really helpful, really useful, and it doesn't break the bank. It doesn't always have to be a big giant enterprise level end-to-end project. So cool little thing.
Thanks. Anybody else want to volunteer? Do we have any newcomers here? I see a couple names. Forgive me, I don't remember seeing them before. I'm going to try not to embarrass myself. Let's see, Oscar? Where are you joining us from?
Oh, Michigan.
Oh, okay. Well, welcome. Is this your first time? I don't recognize the name, but I may, I haven't attended every single one. So
I attend some here and there. I don't always have the time to be able to come online.
Oh, okay. Yeah, well, it's good to see you. So, and Dominique, I don't think we've seen you in a little bit. Remind me, where are you calling in from?
Hi, I'm calling from Ottawa, Canada.
Ah, that's right. Okay.
Yeah, I missed a couple last time.
Well, welcome back. Welcome back. It's good to have you.
Thanks. It's great.
All right. So everybody remember that your microphones can come on. This isn't a webinar. Feel free to interrupt, jump in with questions and so forth, and do our best to make things difficult for Charles, who's going to be our presenter tonight. And Charles is presenting a kind of a list filtering widget. I'm probably understating it, but I know Charles has shown me some of this before in bits and pieces. So I know I'm looking forward to getting kind of a run through of where he is on it. He's been pretty constantly improving it. And I think you guys are going to like it. So I think we'll turn it over to you now, Charles. You want to give us the rundown here? All right, thanks.
Yeah, sure. Well, as Chris said, my name's Charles. Charles Wolchin. I own and work for a company called Creative Customized Programming and we're just outside of Chicago. Mainly we work with the agriculture industry, specifically corn and soybean producers. We have a vertical market solution that we sell to them to basically manage their entire business, production, inventory, sales, and all the various reporting that has to be done in that industry. So we've been around, Creative Customized Programming has been around for about 3.5 years now, working with these ag people. It's a small firm. There's 4 of us total, 2 full-time, 2 part-time. And we feel that what we've done in the last 3 years is pretty awesome. Our customers like it. And as Chris mentioned, what I want to show you today is a filtering widget, we call it, that we've been using mainly for reports, but it can be used for really any type of list filtering, any type of filtering that solves a lot of problems that is inherent with doing reports and displaying information for clients. The big question that we always have for developers when I present this is, how are you currently allowing your users to filter a report or do a find on a report or any kind of list? What methods are out there? And if anybody has anything awesome, they can jump in. Okay.
Well, I know when we do reports, I actually wrote a blog about 5 questions, and I can give you a report. But to figure out what table it's coming from, which records to show, et cetera. And we generally can our reports. Like ask the user a couple of questions and then get the right records. And then things like sorting and sub-summarizing, they're very specific to the one report. So it's good for doing that one thing, but it doesn't give the client the kind of flexibility and ad hoc reporting that your widget does. So. Sure.
And that was the big thing that we wanted to accomplish. Instead of having pre-programmed canned reports, and canned sorts, we wanted our users to be able to create ad hoc reports. We're dealing with customers who have tens of thousands of sales lines in a year. And when they look at a report, they don't want to look at the entire list at one time, even if it's sorted and sub-summarized. They want to break it down and look at maybe one specific sales rep and one specific class of product, maybe a specific date range, and have summaries and information that they can get from that without having to send it to Excel and parse it out and sort it and do whatever they might do over there. Also, we didn't want to have to spend, although we would love the hours of time that would get us and billable time that would get us, have the hours of development time of writing reports for all of our clients. And currently we have 18, I apologize, we just picked up 2. We have 20 clients using this same canned software, and to try and create reports for all 20 of them would eat up probably most of our time, if not all of it. So a couple options that we had tossed around were things like, and going into find mode. That's a pretty simple way to do some filtering. Let the client go into find mode, type in their requests. But a lot of these people, or a lot of our customers, wanted to be able to do multiple different requests and complicated finds that would require a lot of training in find mode. Also, we don't want to display the status bar, which means making omits becomes a bit of a hassle. Omit finds becomes a bit of a hassle. And finally, it doesn't really solve the problem of sorting. Sorting has always been an issue in FileMaker because there's no dynamic abstractable sort feature. And teaching some of our users to use FileMaker's sort options is pretty intense, especially when we don't have customer-facing field names. As a lot of developers, a lot of other developers, we have a naming convention that makes sense to us and makes development really easy, but doesn't really look very friendly to the customer. So what we wanted to do is create a forward-facing, very user-friendly, user-intuitive filtering application or filtering widget that our customers could use and get the reports they wanted. So this thing's gone through a couple different iterations. The first iteration that we had was something like this. We put a bunch of global fields at the top of a report. We allowed the user to select or enter data into various fields, select different options, maybe in some cases select multiple options, and have all of these options populate the report. At the end, they'd fill it all in, they'd click filter, and it would populate with some results. How we were doing that was we created a looping script that would go through and find all the values for each of the fields. It would make multiple find requests, compile these find requests and put them all together. It worked. The problem that we ran into is, one, this is kind of a difficult script to read and write for some people. It's easy to get lost in loops inside of loops. We found it was very easy to come up with several hundred find requests without filling in too many options. So we decided to move away from this, and about a year and a half ago, I think, we worked with Chris and his team over there at Extense Tech and created a little bit simpler version of this script that was a little more generic. Instead of doing a looping set of find requests where we compiled the requests together, we did a loop of constrained finds. It worked very well. It was easy to implement, and that was what we would do, is put names on the fields, and based on the names, the script would then know where to do the finds. It still didn't solve our sorting problem. It was easy to implement in that all we had to do was drop a field on a layout and name it. But it was easy to break because, I mean, if we copied a field and forgot to change the name, that would cause a problem. We also ran into issues with running out of space. I mean, you see here on this report all the different filtering options we have. It just looks cluttered. Selecting multiple options with a checkbox set is great until you have large sets of data and you can't scroll with checkbox sets. So we wanted to come up with a better way to do this. So what we came up with is our filtering widget. And when I pull up a report here, we take our clients to a blank screen. Our users always come to a blank screen for a report and then put in the criteria they're looking for. So in this case, let's say we want all the 2017 sales that are still open, meaning they haven't shipped, but we only want to look at corn. So as you can see, my filter now is very user-friendly. We have different categories. As we select on the different categories, we get our different options. So we can fill in as many as we want. We get things like, we've created omit features. We can allow users to select multiple options for each category. And this thing is completely portable. We can take it from one layout to the next, and all we have to do is set up some records in a table in the background to make this all work. So this handles the filtering, but we wanted to take it a step further. We wanted to be able to sort as well. As I mentioned before, FileMaker's sorting options use our development field names. They're just not very user-friendly. So we created with this a sort option. We can come in here. We can select a category that we want to sort by, and maybe a couple different ones. We'll sort by class, then by customer, and we're going to sub-summary by class. And let's apply that. Now, this set of functionality that we have here, we could have done with a script and a bunch of if statements and else ifs and create every combination, but we really didn't want to have a script like that, especially considering that our standard base file that we sell has over 70 reports in it, plus the additional 50 that we've created custom for our customers. That sorting script was going to get a little crazy. So here we have a sorting feature that gives us by class, you can see those summaries there, sort by customer, and it's completely abstract. The final step that we wanted to do with this is give the clients the ability, there's a question here, is the sort a hierarchy from the selection? Yes. We can sort that. The customer can select that in any way. The sorts in any way they want. Of course, it's all dependent upon how we set up the sub-summaries. As long as they don't have to worry, or as long as they're not worried about the sub-summary part, they can sort it any way they want. It gets a little hairy when they select sub-summaries on everything. But I'll show you all that here in just a few minutes. The final thing that we wanted them to be able to do is to save this setup. We have this criteria, we have this sort, they like it, they're going to run this report every Monday. But we didn't want them to have to come back and re-enter all this information to run this report. So basically creating canned reports on the fly. So we created a save filter option that they can go in, they can put a name, they can determine who's allowed to see that, and they can save it. Now, at any time, regardless of where they're at in the system, they can go to saved reports, they can click on that sales 2017 that we just did, and it's going to go and run that report for us with the current criteria with those sort options. And here we can see our sub-summaries again. So that's the functionality of the widget. I'm guessing you guys would probably like to see how that all works. It's very quiet.
Yes.
Yes.
Show me,
Yes,
please.
yes.
Show me the script.
So the setup with this is actually pretty easy. It's nothing extremely complicated. So let's start out with just the layout setup. What we have here is a little popover that has some portals on it. Now, I will preface this with saying we are using Selector Connector, so we do have access to some of these tables regardless of context. So that does help simplify the process, and I'm going to be showing this with that being the premise. You could set this up and not be using Selector Connector. The scripting would be a little bit more complicated, would involve a few more relationships on your relationship graph, but it can be done. But to start with, the widget itself is just a popover with a couple portals on it. There's a slide panel back here and some button bars. The filter categories are all stored in a table that we command what to do with. The options that we select are out of a virtual list. So we create this list on the fly based on value lists that we've created in the system. As far as the saved reports go, again, it's just a portal selecting what jobs, what security levels can see it. And the sorts, just like in the filters, we have a sorts table where we put our different sort criteria in, and then we have a virtual list that we create that shows that sort order. So what I'll show you first is our tables. So for our filters, what we've done is create a table in the background. Our customers, our users never see this table, but this stores what layout, what we're titling this, what field we're going to filter on, what field we're going to store the sort criteria or the filter criteria in, a type of data, and a value list that we might be displaying, as well as things like prefix and suffix that would go ahead of or behind of the find criteria in each situation. We've also put a sort order on this, which is very handy. One of the things that we've written into our script, which you'll see in just a minute, is we run the sorts, the constrained finds, based on this sort order. So we go through and optimize our finds by eliminating the highest number of records first, and then also making sure that we do any finds that are done on unstored calculations or related fields towards the end. It really was a game changer in performance as far as our filtering goes. We have a very similar table for sorts. Again, it has the layout on it, well, the customer facing name, and then the table and the sort field and the field that we're going to be sorting on. Then we use a couple custom functions to grab the FileMaker field ID and an ID for a subfield. The trick that we're using to create the sub summaries is we have two fields that have identical information in them, and in one case we sort by, if we don't want the sub summary, we sort by one field. If we do want the sub summary, we sort by another. So that's the general table setup. Relationship graph wise, it's a pretty easy setup as well. As I mentioned, we are using Selector Connector. And yes, our relationship graph is huge and crazy. But because we're using Selector Connector, all we have to do is hang one filters table, one sorts tog, and our virtual list togs, and then those as well in the selector tables. So we have a filter for our selector, and we have a sorts for our selector as well. That allows us to, from any context, to perform these finds without having a lot of setup.
So yeah, I figured I would just jump in with a quick question. But so these sorts,
yeah, of course,
filter settings. Yeah, I'm like, it is just too quiet here. These tables are these for the user to kind of like go through cans, sorts, and filters and apply them, or why do you store these in tables?
We store them in tables like this because we wanted to be able to create one widget that we could copy from layout to layout and not go in and have to build it for each specific report. We also wanted to build the script in a way that we didn't have to change the script in any way for each report. We wanted one universal piece to copy to each of our reports.
So these are basically configuration records. They're populating your value lists, like populating your portal of choices for any given layout, right?
Yes,
and
that
what
is
to do if they're selected.
Oh, that makes a lot more sense. I was wondering what were those? Where were those records showing? What were those filling up? But now I'm remembering those portals you just showed.
Yeah.
Sure.
And that's that. Okay, so this is how these all link up: is that you're on this layout filtering these things, so these will show in your portal, sort of thing.
Right, and then if I select this field and I say I want to sort by it, then here's the field you'll actually sort by. If I say I want to sub-summarize, here's the field I'll actually sort by. What are my options if I select this field? Like, what's the value list and so forth? Am I down the right path here?
That is exactly right. So what we have here is what I pulled up is just one report's worth of filters. So this is our sales report. These are our different filter categories. So booking quantity, date, class, customer. We're storing in here then what field to perform the find for that criteria on. So if we select a class, we're telling it perform the find in line items product class. We're also telling it where to store that information while I'm compiling my find criteria. We're just using a global field to store it just because it makes life a little bit easier. We could create a variable to put all this together, but we just store it in global fields to make life easy.
Yeah, actually, Charles, that was my question. Why are you creating a global field for each one of these? I mean,
instead of
harder.
using a variable, or instead of using
yeah, you could use a variable, or you could use a single global that just has field value pairs.
We could. A couple reasons. The main one that we were using just generic globals, but a problem we ran into is our users discovered they can go window, new window, and they can put 2 reports on the screen. And if they put a date on one report, they want the find criteria on the other report to be already set up. So say we're comparing, we want to look at 2 reports for the same date range, or the same criteria, and I might be changing that criteria regularly. They can now bounce back and forth between the 2 reports very easily, and
so you're saying you want them to share criteria?
That's what our customers have requested. Yes.
Oh, I would have expected that they'd want them to be independent. But
well, that's what we had originally thought too. But
yeah, but in any case, I mean, global variables or one global field with field value pairs would still do that, right?
It could. The other thing we ran into was, which we probably still could have done. I don't really have a reason as to why this would have, or why I didn't use variables. I just decided to put it into a global field.
Okay. I'm not trying to nitpick. I thought.
Yeah. No.
You've been working with it for a while. I mean, one possible advantage I can see is this is more explicit. It's a little easier to look at it and know what's going on. And sometimes, enough of a reason, there's a ceiling to how far you want to abstract before nobody can read it anymore, right? So.
Right. It made doing things like the conditional formatting a little bit easier.
Yeah.
Tool tipping, stuff like that. So if we look at, we're on the sales report here, which is the report that's going to display the criteria for that for those filters we were just looking at. And of course it's going to bog down on me because I'm doing a presentation.
Oh, of course. Nothing breaks things like a demo, right? But here's where you've added a sub-summary part for each field you want to be able to summarize by, correct?
That is correct. Yeah. So each field we allow the user to summary by, or sub-summary by, is set up as a sub-summary part. We can turn that option on and off for each report and each or each sort option, to simplify that so that we don't have to put so many options on each report. Sometimes we know they won't want to sort by that, so we can leave it off. When I click on the filter here, here's that list of criteria. And when I click on script debugger, when I select a category, it goes through and does set a couple global variables for us, finds out what kind of value we're working with, whether it be a value list, a date, or a checkbox or a text field. And then grabs the related value list, and inserts that into a virtual list so that we can work with it. We've had to use a couple tricks with the value lists. This being one of the cases where we wanted to display two values, a customer ID number and a customer name. The problem we run into is there's no way to grab the second field off of a value list in FileMaker. If somebody has a way, I'd love to know it, but I don't know of a way to grab the second field out of a value list using the get value list items. So we created calculated fields to run our value lists out of to be able to break out into two fields. But then when we select a category, we then can select one or multiple options within the value list. And it's just going to set that into that global field, along with a piece of information as to whether we want to include or omit that criteria. So it defaults to including. And if I hold my cursor here, we see the find criteria. So that would, the part of the reason we use the global field is it does make a lot of this conditional formatting easier for us. And again, we can select multiple options here, as many as we want. And it just keeps adding those to the list. And we can deselect them, and it removes them from our list. Pretty straightforward there. The key to this really comes when we run the actual script that goes through. Here's our one script. We use this one single script to do all of our filtering. We start off with passing in a few parameters, but the key here is we get a list of records, primary keys from the filters that are from the optional filters that are on our report. And then we run through and process each of those, determining if there's a value in them. And if there's a value, we insert those values into the appropriate fields. And then after we do each one field, we do a constrained find. We really found the constrained find to be a lot faster because we're able to, as I mentioned before, run the filters based on what would be the easiest finds first. So we get rid of things like, or we might run it on a customer number, or customer ID first, because that's going to give us a small found set to begin with. And then we might limit it, do another limiting factor. And then finally, if we have any related records, which typically take a long time or longer to do a filter on, we run those constrained finds last. And because they're working on a much smaller found set. The other thing so as we're going through here, we set each value or each key to our selector. We grab the information out of it, such as what values are there, what values have we decided to omit, what type of a find is it, is there any special evaluation features with this. We then go through and loop through and set each of these find criteria. we did find it's important. You have to set your include finds first and your omit finds second. If you intermingle them, the constraint doesn't work.
Yeah, the order.
You don't get the right results. The order does matter. So that's why we do have two separate sets of loops here. The first set, we loop through the include values and use a set field by name to set them into the field we're doing the find on. And for our second set, we loop through the omit values, doing again set field by name. And as you notice, all of this is abstracted. We're not calling out any field values or field names specifically. We're calling out variables and set field by names so that we can copy and paste this anywhere.
Hey, Charles, this is Jason.
Yeah.
I have a question for you. So on the constraining, when you loop through, is it you loop through on your easier finds first, and then once you have a found set, then you go back and do a constrain, or all your loops that you just showed us, it all happens based upon the order of the finds that you have in the find sequence?
It's all based on the order that we have in the find sequence. So for this report, for the sales report here, if I look at this by sort order, the first thing we do right now is filter out our type. We're looking for a specific type of line in that table. Then we find all of the years that match the year we requested if we have a year request. Then we constrain down to customer, then dealer, delivery type. We do each of these finds as we go, or each of these constraints one after the other. We don't build up a large find request and constrain to that. We do many small requests. So in this case, we might have, if there's an option in every one of these, we would have 32 constraints in this single find. But we have found it's still significantly faster than having the same finds where we build up large find requests using a loop and build up many find requests, especially when we start looking at related records, as we see down here towards the bottom we have, or any unstored calculations. If you're doing a find on an unstored calculation, that can take a very significant amount of time. Whereas when we do it this way, by the time we get to that unstored calculation, we've got a very small found set.
So you're dictating the order of the find requests with that first column there, that sort that you're entering as a full access user configuring this, right?
That's correct. Yep. It's really allowed us to optimize the performance of these filters, of these finds.
So Charles, you're saying that makes it dynamic. So if you ever find out that if you moved one of these orders, it would speed it up, it would be easy to do?
Yeah. So actually, we've learned that recently. We've learned that it helps if we don't have this find first. This is a find that we do all the time on all of our records. The problem is it doesn't actually eliminate the largest number of possible records first. What we've found is something like doing a find on the customer number for this report does do the find, or is faster if we do that one first. So all I have to do is switch that from 3 to 1, switch type from 1 to 3 or wherever I want it, and now it's reordered, and it's going to do customer name or customer number first, and this type find later on.
Well, Charles, that's great because that's a revelation to me. So I'm going to try this on. I have a good report that I can try this on that people complain about, and they use it often. So I'm going to give this technique a try. Thank you. Yeah,
it really has made a big difference. Chris was the one who originally turned me on to the repeated constraints, And now that we've been able to change the order in which we do those constraints, it really does make a big difference. We've really learned the goal is get rid of the most records out of the found set first. And the more you can do that, the faster the reports end up being. And also watching things like when these date ranges here. Doing these finds is greater than or equal to and less than or equal to instead of a date range has seemed to be faster. And also watching where you put those in your find request seems to make a big difference as well. But getting rid of large sets of data, get the smallest found set you can first, has been a big performance increase.
Yeah. Hey, this is Jason Sanders. Jason
Yeah.
Bork. I think there's some better documentation around in the FileMaker, maybe white papers and stuff like that. But certainly in general, on using the same principle to form relationships on the relationship graph. When you view related records, FileMaker essentially executes a find for you, right? So it's essentially the same kind of operation, right? But it's same principles, right? When you create relationships that have multiple predicates, if you arrange the predicates so that you, like Charlie's saying there, eliminate, put the thing at the top of the set of your relationship that eliminates the most records in the relationship first, then each subsequent predicate has less work to do to narrow the found set. I will throw in there though that if the thing that eliminates the most records first is a very complex calculation or something like that, you probably don't want to do that one first, right? You got to kind of temper this a bit in both cases, in scripting finds as well as building relationships, but that you need to you got to kind of weigh that out to go, well, this is a very complex thing to find on, so I probably want to try to limit my found set otherwise first and then hit that thing. But definitely huge differences in performance. And so remember that you can do that with your finds for reporting, but also certainly that it works on your relationships as well.
Hey Jason, thanks for mentioning that. It's great. Appreciate it.
Yeah, we unfortunately haven't had enough time to test it too much, but I have heard that as well. And is something that I want to get into that we're going to start looking at as well. For us, the order that we set is we'll work with stored. The top of our list will tend to be stored numbers, and we'll move to like stored text and dates, stored dates, and then it's kind of a toss-up between related records and unstored calculations being our last two sets. Depending on what the relationship is and depending on what the unstored calculation is, we'll determine which one goes first. And some of that just involves a little bit of testing, performance testing, to find out what the better route is, because we haven't found a silver bullet that it works better one way or the other all the time.
I think Jason could probably testify that a related field is much faster to search on than an unstored local field referencing a related field.
Yeah, I was just about to add that here. I was going to say, Charlie, like if you look at line 31 in your sort order there, down near the bottom, you've got LNI BOK cuss farm manager there. If you were to calculate in the LNI table a field that equals LNI BOK cuss farm manager, just as simple as that, right? And this may be a very simple relationship, right? But if you were to calculate a field over an LNI that equals that same value and search on that instead, the results are terrible. So FileMaker actually cares. So when possible, right, you want to do your finds in the related table, right? So search in LNI BOK cuss farm manager as opposed to a closer calculated field, closer meaning like, you know, one hop closer on the relationship graph. That one hop is a
Sure.
huge performance gain. So anybody out there who's looking to kind of tweak performance on finding, that one is a whopper. Get us, you know, do your search in the table where the field exists, where it's stored. That will be a game changer.
That is awesome information to know. I will make sure to use that. For our clients, performance is huge. I've got clients using our program remotely with a maximum download speed of 3 meg. I do have a client who uses this 8 hours a day from a remote server that they have a 3 meg download speed. So for us, any little bit of performance makes a big difference for clients like that.
Yeah, that one we kind of stumbled on just because it's so convenient. For instance, like if you, what's a good example? I don't know, Chris, bail me out. I think it was to do with like a structure we have with contact management where we have kind of a table called contacts, but behind that table we in some of our other older solutions we'd have like a people table and a contacts table, or a companies table, where we broke those out. A contact can be a person or a company. So we'd often calculate a field in the front on the contact record that would equal the name of either the company or the person, depending on what kind of contact we were dealing with. So we just kind of generally do finds on that local contacts calculation in order to, you know, do a search for a person's name or a company's name or something like that. But we found that doing that was, again, a massive slowdown. So where you've done that, where you've stepped into that, well, it's convenient to have this field local because, you know, I don't want to recreate this relationship all over the graph or something. So I calculated a field there. It is convenient in many cases for development, but boy, for searches, it will again change the game. You know, you want to do your searches in that table. Even if it's across 2 or 3 or 4 relationship hops away, put your search criteria in the field where in the table where that exists.
Huh. That is awesome information to know. Awesome. So yeah.
Sorry, yeah. And you thought we were too quiet, right? Now we won't let you talk.
Well, no, this is great.
I thought in one of your iterations you had where after you'd done all your selections and applied your filter, I thought you had some text that, oh, I see it. It's over to the left. I don't think you mentioned it. I didn't notice it, where it says like year 2017. You know, so you have something on the screen that tells the user what they're filtered by, which is a nice indicator. Number one, I was looking for that, and like I said, I don't think you mentioned it. I think that's important, but I did have a follow-on question about that thing now that I found it.
Yeah, go ahead.
Which is, do you allow them to do searches, like to just go into find mode or omit records or any of that?
Well, first we let the status
bar. Could I just go
so,
record, omit record? I'm not talking about the status bar. I'm just talking about menus and so forth.
Most of our users cannot. There are a couple security levels that can. But for the most part, we exclude that ability, and have hidden that in the graph or in the menus.
Yeah, because I was considering this. I was considering this for a broader application in a future development, where you know, making basically all our lists use something like this. I was wondering, what would you do if somebody just manually did a find or decided to omit one record? Then your little indicator there is no longer 100% accurate. You know, it's almost like It's almost like in the status bar where you've got something sorted and then you add a new record and it says semi-sorted. You know, you almost see something like that. Like, this is semi-filtered, but you've messed with it since then. So. Yeah,
we've taken away that ability. So what what we have found is, at least of late being the last year for sure, we're a whole lot better off giving our users less access. The more we can take away, the better our lives get, because we found they can get into things we don't want them to get into, or do things like this, omit a record. And when we put a find criteria, list off what the find was, which also shows up on the print. If the client, the user, does have the ability to omit a bunch of records, then we have that exact situation of now the found set doesn't match what the criteria says, and we get called as to why does this not add up.
Yeah, so if you were to allow it, you would at least need something that altered that statement at the top to say something like,
right,
no, this was the original filter, but it's been modified, or manual search performed. In other words, you're on your own. I can't tell you.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
And,
we've for the most part turned off find mode in most cases. A handful of our users, upper level users, are able to use it because they know the limitations of it. But on a lot of our reports, our reports are pure sub summaries. So even in find mode, they can't get any information anyways. They can't enter anything.
And then I was going to ask whether you've gotten requests for, terrible word, but for multiple requests. In other words,
what do you mean for multiple?
In other words, find me all the corn in 2016 and the soybeans in 2017.
No.
You haven't gotten
no,
any
we
requests
haven't.
for those.
We haven't gotten that yet.
Because you're essentially doing in reality, you're doing multiple requests because you're doing a bunch of constraints, and you're also doing multiple requests because you're doing your omits after your find, obviously.
Right.
But I didn't know if any users. I know in our experience, people don't realize what the advanced find functions are for. Sometimes for like a decade, and then all of a sudden it's the most important thing in the world.
Yeah, we're, as of right now, no, we haven't had those kind of requests. Luckily, everything for us stays within, certain criterias.
Just curious.
Yeah. I couldn't imagine with our users right now. I couldn't imagine trying to train somebody on that.
Yeah, I was sitting here thinking about that, and thinking it would end up looking, well, functionally anyway, looking a lot like the perform find script step, the interface for that.
Yeah. Where
you create a request with a bunch of fields and values, and then another request with fields and values. And, but it'd be hard. It would be interesting to try and make that user friendly.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, user friendly. Right now, it's user friendly if you're a developer, but it's.
That's a stretch. By the way, that's like
it's not
one
English.
Of the 3 worst dialogues in FileMaker, I think. By the way.
Oh, I can't even imagine that being in the same list with the import dialogue. By the way, but. One last thing, and then I'll let you run. But let you run with this, and I'll finally let you talk. But I was really curious about that. Don't forget to show you're using snapshot links for your sorts, right?
Yeah, we're getting there.
We definitely
just about there,
because that was pretty cool. So all right, I'll shut up now. Thanks.
Oh, okay. So the filters. I mean, the filters themselves are pretty straightforward, and finding the information, doing the constraints, relatively straightforward. The game changer really was the sorts, because I don't know about all the rest of you, but this is a horrible dialog box, and I really don't want my clients using this. You know, as I said before, these just aren't customer facing names in most cases. And ours are pretty good, but you know, when I'm talking about foreign keys and them needing to know what they're allowed to sort on or subsummary on and what they can't, and that's not considering related records and trying to teach them related records and how to sort on related records. It's just a mess. Or so we wanted a sort, and we are using, I can't claim this technique. We are using somebody else's technique, but we are creating a snapshot link and then modifying it. So the key here is not really this user functionality, being able to set up the sort, but the scripting that's involved with creating or doing this sort and doing this well. So scroll down here and find that. So the first thing we do after we do the find is build up a list. Build up a piece of XML that we're going to insert into the snapshot link. And this is really key, or this is why we really need these field values here. FileMaker snapshot links are a great tool. We can create them, modify them, export that value out and have it open right away, and we get this sorted report that works very well. However, it does use FileMaker's internal field IDs. So that is something to keep in mind, or field IDs and table IDs. Something to keep in mind that you'll have to get those for your fields. There's a couple of good custom functions on like Brian Dunning to get those. You can use FileMaker. Well, it's a little known secret. And Chris, we were just talking about it. You can use the execute or the SQL schema for FileMaker, the schema tables, to grab that information as well. And we just had that.
Yeah,
I saved that link somewhere.
Yeah, I have a bookmark because I can never find it when I'm looking for it.
Yeah.
Well, until I finally bookmark the darn thing. I don't know
so that's
how many people on the call have ever heard of that, but you can query using execute SQL. You can query two tables that are not FileMaker tables, are not tables you've built, and those tables are lists of FileMaker table occurrences, more accurately, and FileMaker field names, and you can get the IDs of either one. Not just the IDs, but you can also get like what type of field is this, what's the base table for this table occurrence, things like that. I just posted a link to the page that explains it all. But
it's yeah, very, very handy. It's easier, better than using custom functions. The custom functions have a requirement, have a caveat, and that is if you have a layout named the same as the base table that you're trying to get the record ID from, or the base table for the field you're trying to get the record ID from, it really doesn't work. You can't have the layout name be the same as the base table name, or that field has to reside on that layout in order for the custom function to work. You don't run into that limitation with the design SQL function that was just posted. So let me bring that script back up. but anyways, we go through and we loop that and loop through those sort criteria and build up a function, or build up some XML that we're going to put into this snapshot link. The best way to do this is just stop the script when we get there. We're going to have it run the find and everything before the sort. And once we get to the sort here, we're going to start building up this function, this execute SQL. Or this XML, sorry. So as we go through our sort criteria, we'll start to see this sort variable fill in with the information. And in just a minute, we'll see what that XML looks like, the snapshot link XML. So once we get through the loop of all of that, what we end up with is some XML that looks like this. We're telling it sort the list, the type of the sort, the primary field. This is where we start using those field IDs and table IDs. For some reason, it wants both, but it really only, from what I can tell, it only uses the ID number, not the name of the field or the table that you put in here. But you can see in our example here, we've put in both the sorts for class, sub-summary, and the sort for customer with those field IDs. Once we perform the find, we're going to set a path for our temporary path, and we are going to store that save a snapshot link to that path. And then we're going to insert that snapshot link. In our case, we're doing it into a web viewer because we can set it to a file name. We can set the file name as the URL and be able to view that in a web viewer. And I'll just, for display purposes here, I'll stop this and show you what that XML looks like right now. And I should put a pop over here.
Charlie, while you're sausage there, I want to congratulate you on finding a constructive use for the martini glass icon that FileMaker provided there.
That's what all of my clients call it. It is the martini glass.
It's obviously, it's got olives. I mean, come on.
Yes, that's what they call it. They all like it very well. I gotta find that thing. Now that I think about it, I just can't put a web viewer on there. Yes, they do call it, my clients do refer to that as the martini glass. It does kind of make us laugh because they didn't understand that was a filter, or a funnel.
Yeah, it's a funnel at best, right? I mean,
Right. You know, it's.
How do you make an icon for like a sieve? What's a sieve look like as an icon?
You know, I was just thinking about this. I was going to show this to you, but every way I look at this, I'm going to have trouble with that. I've got, because I have a web viewer on the screen that's hidden, and I can't have two objects on there with the same name. And I can't remember where I hit the thing.
You're using that web viewer to read the contents of the snapshot link?
Right.
Yeah.
Yes, I am. So once this saves here, we can see it in the why don't I just put a second web viewer on here? We'll name it the same thing. Or not name it the same thing, but just name it. I apologize here, guys. I didn't think to do this ahead of time. Now we should be able to see what that looks like. So yeah, we'll run the find request. And then we'll set our XML into the web viewers. Except that one didn't work. Oh, it's laying it all out in one long line.
Oh, is it?
Yeah. So here's a better view. We use once we save it into the web viewer or bring it up in the web viewer, we use the get layout object attributes to get the contents of that, and we store that in a variable. So here's what a FileMaker snapshot link looks like. It tells this gives the version, XML version, listed as a FileMaker snapshot link, gives the location, the file path of where it's at, and then gives a very nice summary of the records that it's displaying. And this is using FileMaker's record ID number, which would be very hard for us to recreate this itself, especially the ranges on the way it does the ranges for the record IDs would involve some pretty intense looping and scripting. So to write this snapshot link from scratch would be rather involved. However, if we save the snapshot link and then just modify it, grab the XML and modify the piece we need, which is this item right here, we can swap that out for the one that we want, the value that we want. Which we do there. we clear out the, and you can see that's all here. We clear out the web viewer. We store our XML into a text field, just a text global, and then we do a couple window handling things so we can close this window when we come back, and we export that field out with the automatically open option checked on the export field contents. Now, it does look like it didn't work. The reason for that is, in case you don't know, export field contents with the automatically open option does not work in script debugger. You cannot have script debugger on and that function. So you have to close your script debugger and run it. And that's how we get our sorts to work. We're basically modifying the snapshot link and putting that together. We do the same thing with the saves. We save the sort options, modify the snapshot link, and when we bring up the saved finds as well. So
Charles, I think you and I might have talked about this, the other way to get the contents of a text file.
Maybe. I don't quite remember right now if we did or didn't.
Because the way you're doing it with a web viewer, by the way, is just adds to the toolbox. It was something I wouldn't have thought of. But if you, boy, this is easier to show than to tell. Do you have a place with just like a global container field that you could throw that snapshot link? Yeah, can you just throw that snapshot link into a container field? Even a test record would do it.
Yeah.
I mean, a test file, excuse me, if you wanted to just make a file with one field in it or something. I hope I'm not derailing, but I know for myself, when I started working trying to play with snapshot links, that was a big obstacle, was trying to figure out, I want to read the darn thing. And I didn't come up with the web viewer option, and I didn't come up with this one either. I should, full disclosure, somebody else figured it out for me. There you go. So we've got a container field. Can you just, and it doesn't matter whether it's global or not for this demonstration, but can you drop the snapshot link into that global field?
Yeah.
First, we have to remember how to put a field on a layout, right? Because some days. Okay, so I don't know where you actually stored the snapshot link, but if you could drop it in there.
Yeah. How about let's just save a snapshot link, because it's saved to a temporary file,
you can just save one to your desktop or something.
Yeah.
Of course, this one won't be terribly exciting, right? But
yeah, that's why I'm going to do it from here.
Yeah. Okay, so now in your data viewer, if you were to just put that container in the data viewer, it helpfully gives you a path, which is not what you want, right? But if you wrap that in what is it? No, it's base 64 decode of base 64 encode of that container. and then evaluate now. There you go.
There you go. That is
So
not
if you
a
were
way
to,
that I would have done it.
right, and it's not, I didn't think of it either. I was beating my head against a brick wall. A guy named Brian Sanchez at, oh, what do they call their company? Their product is called ACES.
AACE.
AACE, that's right. He figured it out, and I'm like, how many things did you try before that came to mind, right? But you see, what you could do is grab the snapshot link you just created, put it into your container field, and then read it, rather than having a web.
And the nice thing about that is it appears you don't need the field on the layout.
You might need it on the layout to put the file into the container, though.
Do you? Yeah, if you're using,
because that's an insert command, and all the insert commands require the stupid field to be on the layout. But yeah, I thought that was really clever. And like I said, when Brian found that, I'm like, what do you do with your day? You just sit around trying various combinations. I mean, that's way out there, but it works. It's so you can throw any sort of text file into a container and quickly read it out, so that you can parse it or whatever.
That is very helpful. Very helpful.
Hey, Charles.
Yeah.
I have a question on this. Is Jason Burke again? So now that you're saving these snapshots, how does the user see them as a list for searching? Do you read the list of files from a directory, or do you just remember in FileMaker which things you've exported?
Sure. We actually aren't saving the snapshot links and using the snapshot links, because we don't, when we come back to these reports, we're not looking to come back to that set of records. What we're looking to come back to is the updated data. So we actually are saving, when we do a saved find, we are saving the records, the named value pairs, and various other information. Let me bring that. We're actually saving that in another table. And let me bring that table up and show you what we're doing with that. But we're not storing the snapshot link anywhere. We create it, modify it quickly, and get out.
So what you're basically storing is like the sort parameters, right?
Right. The parameters themselves.
Yeah.
So what we're storing here is the find criteria. So we're storing what was let's get a little bit more friendly view here. We're storing the named value pairs, so the name of the field, the global field that we were storing that data in, and what the values in there were at the time. And then for the sort, we create that XML and store that in here as well. And that way, all we have to do is swap out the sort portion of the XML for the new snapshot link when we pull up that saved report. So we go in, we parse out the find request, run our find, create a snapshot link of the find, and then swap out the sort, and then open the snapshot link. We never actually save for user consumption the snapshot link.
That's great. Thank you.
Yeah. Again, the goal here for the saving these was not to save this report in its current format with its current record set, its current found set. We wanted to save the criteria so that next week when we come to it and we run that new that report, we get all of this week's or the previous week's new sales, and then the next Monday we get that week's sales, and on. So that report is constantly up to date with the current data. We didn't want to see that record set. We wanted to see the current data for that criteria.
So that was faster than capturing all your sorting and then saving all that information someplace and then trying to recreate that sort with that script you showed us earlier?
Yeah, because we already, because we're saving this somewhere, we already have this field. We were able to avoid running through that loop again. Once we have the XML, we can use it again and again because that never changes. Those field IDs never change.
So really the part that changes is the C data portion, the list of record IDs.
The list of record IDs, exactly.
Right.
This portion,
so
we look at our
so
data viewer
actually,
from our test here.
Actually, Charlie, if you were to save, if you were to save the whole
This is the portion that changes.
Right. So if you were to save the whole snapshot link, or at least all the text from the snapshot link, and then replace just that portion you have highlighted.
We could.
Right. Because everything else, as you say, stays the same. The sort order, the field names, etc. The layout that you're on, the what do you call it? The layout, the table IDs, all that stuff.
Right.
Nothing changes
the process,
except the list of record IDs.
Right. The process would be relatively the same. You'd still go over, do your find, create the snapshot link, grab that portion of it out and swap it for your old snapshot link,
right,
and then export that out. It's just a different portion of it to a different portion to swap out. It would work either way, both ways.
Yeah, I'm not sure that there'd be much difference. In trying to think of a use case where it might be different is if you pulled up a set of lines on a completely different layout and then said, I want to run this saved report for this found set. In other words, I want to run this.
Yeah.
I want to run this sort order, this subsummary and everything, and show it on the layout. All you would have to do is replace the C data. You could open it; it would go to the right layout, go to the right table, do your sort and everything. But do it for your current found set instead of doing it for the found set that you found before. I don't know if that would be advantageous, but I'm just trying to think of where it might be different.
I could think of a couple of uses where that could be handy. Yeah, definitely. So, I don't know. I don't have too much more, or really much more to show. Other questions? I mean, by all means, ask questions. It's I've only presented this one other time, so I don't know if I lost everybody or
no,
or not.
still here. Did you develop all of this yourself, all of the sorting and the and the filtering and things like that, or did you have a team of people, or did you get some some inspiration from other programs you had seen or anything like that?
The filtering, well, as I mentioned in the beginning, it started with all of my development and a looping set of find requests. I worked with Chris on that next iteration, and actually I've been using that script, that abstracted script that Chris actually wrote for me,
right,
and modifying it and adding pieces. So I worked with him. The sort thing is not mine. I did not come up with using the snapshot link and swapping out the sort criteria. That came from the French company One More Thing? And I can't think of the guy's name right now. Anyways, a while back, he put up a challenge on how to do a dynamic sort.
Right.
And was offering some Belgian chocolate to whoever got it right, because he had come up with a solution. But anyways, it was his technique to swap out the snapshot links. I just packaged it into this usable widget, at least what's usable for my clients, and then created the sort or the saved find functionality, saving those filters, saving that criteria, so that it can be brought up at any point without having to re-enter that data.
Hey, Charles?
Yeah.
So are you saying that you could actually take that XML and change the order of the sorts too, and then put it back in there, and that works?
Yeah, you can, if you were to take that XML and change the order they go in, it changes the order of the sort.
So you could just do a default one where you have like all the possible sorts, and then just remove the ones you don't want at a given time, and then put them back in the order that you want.
Yeah. Yep.
Well, that's great.
You could.
Huh.
You could.
Yeah, Chris here. I spent an inordinate amount of time playing with the snapshot links. I have to say I haven't done anything nearly as useful as this yet. But the possibilities with a snapshot link are really fascinating. That aside from that C data, that section where it gives you ranges of record numbers, that is, as Charles says, that's really hard to come up with via scripting. I mean, it's not so much hard, it's just really, really tedious. You almost have to loop through every record, which is really terrible. But other than that, everything else in there you could write. So you can get your database to open on a prescribed layout with a particular sort order, you know. It's just really cool. Another thing I noticed in working with snapshot links is that outside of the XML, you can add your own text and it won't affect how the snapshot link opens. So if you did want to save the actual snapshot link and you wanted to append your own things, like what should be the front tab, for instance, you could actually embed that in your snapshot link and read it out when you open it to do things like get to the right tab or scroll to the right record or something like that. Oh, actually, scrolling to the right record is also included. Active
it
record
does remember
ID.
what record you're on.
Yeah. So there's a lot of possibilities. There's a lot of caveats too that Charles has dealt with really well. Such as a snapshot link always opens in a new window.
Yeah.
So you have to manage after that window opens. What do I do with the old window? And you kind of have to have something trigger to take care of the old window. Also, your snapshot link will not actually open until your scripts are idle. In other words, it doesn't open when that script step passes. It opens when your script finishes, which is a little tricky with the timing.
Yep. The exiting was something that we had to make sure we knew exactly when to exit the script, because it's pretty much got to be the last step in your script. And then you do have to put some sort of trigger on the layout when you're coming back in, as Chris mentioned, to handle the old window. So what we do is we rename,
an on-record load or an on-layout enter or something like that.
Right. What we do is we rename the title, rename the window, and put old on the end. just something stupid. And then when we go to that layout, we look to see if there's a old window and close the old window. It simplifies it's pretty simple process, and it doesn't have any effect unless the title is old. So.
Charles, this is Frank. If I can jump in here for 2 seconds. I'm actually in a situation where I need to, using WebDirect, have a like a remote workstation, create a PDF and put it back into a container field. And my issue was always the way things were sorted and the summary fields, but this looks like it's going to take care of all of that. Or have you noticed any issues with sub-summaries not working correctly when you pass a snapshot like this?
No, it's always worked correctly as long as you have the right field IDs. You match up your sub-summaries field IDs to the field your sub-summary is set for. The problem is this technique itself, I don't know if you can make it work in WebDirect.
Yeah, WebDirect won't open a snapshot link.
What about a workstation computer that's dedicated for that specific purpose?
Oh, that could, yeah, like a bot computer.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. Snapshot
if you
links.
had a bot, then...
Snapshot links do work on iOS though. So snapshot links work on iOS and they work on FileMaker Pro, but they don't work on WebDirect. So that doesn't mean WebDirect couldn't tell a bot to open a snapshot link. And I don't actually know if a server-side routine can open a snapshot link. That would be an interesting experiment.
Well, the issue with the server is that it can't print. So.
Oh yeah, can't print and can't create PDFs yet. So.
Yet. Soon, right? Soon. They keep telling us that.
Although I did see a session a few years ago at DevCon, this guy had figured out how to write out a PDF as text, like actually build a PDF through data parsing.
Mm-hmm.
And it about made my eyes cross. I was like, because there's a lot of encoding in a PDF, and this guy had figured out like how to make that happen. So you could create PDFs from the server, but the amount of work he had to do is like, I'll wait for the version that has it.
Along those notes, one of the things that I've noticed or had just seen that I want to look into pertaining to printing on WebDirect. Printing on WebDirect doesn't work very well. We can't create PDFs in WebDirect. And I forget, is that a 16 thing? We will be able to do it in 16, according to the roadmap.
I can't remember if that's for 16 or for a future version, for the version that may or may not be,
Right. But what you can do is do rich text RTF, rich text format. Create a rich text file with the formatting you want, and just swap out the pieces that you need to with your own data. So you can create a rich text template and then do a relatively simple substitute for the correct data. And export the RTF. So it's not something I've played with yet, but it's something I have seen. Because rich text includes all the formatting in it as well. So, any other questions, comments?
Yes, Charles.
Turns? Yeah.
Yeah, this is Jason Burke again. So do you offer your client exports from this report, and how do you handle that?
We do offer exports. We kind of we allow them to do the save file as Excel. For some select reports, we have specific scripted exports. We do tell our clients that we're not going to be exporting with the sub-summaries typically, that we just export body data. Our main goal, though, is to keep our clients from exporting. It's part of the reason we wrote this, is we wanted to keep our clients out of Excel and in our solution. Because of the accuracy involved. The minute they export the data to Excel, it's no longer live. It's no longer accurate. We wanted to keep them in our system so that the data they're looking at is real time and live. And since we've done this, put this widget into our solution, which we released to our clients in December. We pretty much stopped all use of Excel. There's very little exporting that gets done now. Most of our clients stay entirely in our system.
Now, that's to me very compelling. We get no end of requests to. I just want to put it in a spreadsheet and fiddle with it, because that's what they've always done, sort of thing.
Right.
And of course, we preach up and down at them to get them to try to learn how to use FileMaker to get the information you need, because of course there's like you were saying, stale data is a very real problem. But some of these people will export a spreadsheet and then they'll just work on the spreadsheet for the next couple of weeks, and none of the information that's added or gleaned from that is shared in the system. Updates to data and that sort of thing aren't happening there. But we like Chris has said before, we really haven't approached this challenge in any of our solutions. So we've always just kind of stuck to our guns and said, we'll can you a report, to get to the thing you want. You just have to kind of nail that down, and then eventually we usually relent if they just won't leave us alone about it, and give them an export so they can do their thing and keep their bad habits. So the fact that you've said that you've gotten them to leave you alone about that is, like I said, really compelling. This method, it does involve some work. So I mean, for the rest of the folks in the room who are going, oh yeah, well, Charlie said this was easy, right? It is a lot of moving parts, and some of it is pretty advanced stuff for sure. But that's a pretty high goal there to go. You don't need to take your data out anymore. You can get what you need here. You can fiddle with it. You can tweak the way you're looking at it. And that's a big deal.
It is. I had one client who was adamant about Excel. He had to export to Excel so he could manipulate it and do his sorts, and he knew how to create his own sub-summaries in Excel, and that's what he did. And he manipulated all kinds of things. After we released this to our clients, he personally called me and said, I have stopped using Excel. I no longer use it. Everything is, all the information I get is now completely out of the system. I no longer need it. So, because that was a point of contention between him and I always razzed him about it. I mean, you do run into issues with stale data, and no joke, I had a client who really did believe that if he exported data to Excel and changed the data in Excel, that it should automatically update the FileMaker solution.
Wow. Yeah, it doesn't do that? What?
Yeah.
That's
was really upset. Really upset when that didn't happen.
That was right up there with the guy with the laser pointer, Chris.
I was just thinking that we were doing a GoToMeeting like this with a client, and he had up on his projector in a conference room. He had basically what we're seeing on screen. And he says, so I'm pointing at this. You see my laser pointer, right? We're like, no. How on earth do you think we're seeing your laser?
Yeah.
Hey, as we're getting close to the end of this, and the questions are kind of winding down, I wanted to throw out to the group that, you know, there's some pretty advanced, or what I think of as advanced techniques in here, like, you know, selector connector. There's virtual lists. There's a lot of hide wins and so forth for getting the, you know, drop downs and check boxes and all that stuff to work. Not to mention the snapshot links that we have talked about in depth. If you're out there and you're listening to this and going, well, everybody else probably knows all that, that's not true. You know, it's pretty rare to see all of these in one widget. So if any of you are looking at this going, I would do this, except I'm not really sure what that virtual list was, and I don't want to ask because everybody else probably knows what it is. Or, you know, selector connector sounds cool, but I don't really know how that works. You know what I mean? You know, speak up. Don't be afraid to ask questions, number one, and don't be afraid to, or in fact, please suggest it for a future FMPUG. You know, something that we could go through in more detail. Because, you know, even though these techniques are for the most part familiar to me, this is really creative use of them, you know, and, you know, there's always something that any of us could learn about. So, you know, doing a whole FMPUG on one small part of this would be fine if there's enough interest.
Yeah, it's as I mentioned, you know, and as Chris mentioned, a lot of this we are able to do because of the way we develop. We do use selector connector now, which if you don't know what that is, if you haven't heard of that, or even if you've heard of it and haven't gone and looked it up, you're not using it yet, I do highly suggest looking that up, watching the videos. Todd Geist has a great post about it. Jason Young has a great post about it. Look into it. For us, quite honestly, it was life-changing, game-changing in how we developed and how we create records, how we navigate to records. It's completely changed everything we do. So definitely do look into that if you haven't had an opportunity yet. You know, our naming convention helps, and as Chris mentioned, this is really a combination of a lot of different techniques. And if you do have a question, would love, you know, feel free to shoot me an email. And I don't know, I can put my email here in the chat. And
no, you
we
sure
can set
can
up
if you're brave.
I'll answer questions.
Yeah, I know you've answered several for me. So.
Yeah, and it's always fun to geek out with another developer. So feel free to,
I was actually thinking,
shoot me an email.
This is Jason again. I was just thinking that, you know, I know I've heard some of this stuff, but sometimes it takes a different person to explain it. And then sometimes just because you're developing as you grow and learn things, it takes you, it might be the right time to hear it where you can apply it to something that you've experienced. And then it all makes sense. So that happened tonight for me in a few spots. So thank you very much.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. This was really, really interesting.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, Charles, for presenting this.
Oh no, thank you.
Like I
guys.
said at the
Thanks
beginning, I've seen bits and pieces, and I was like, this group would love this. There's much to play with here. So,
Yes, a lot of applications for this. So we're definitely going to continue our use of it, especially when 16 comes out with some of its new functionalities, which we're hoping to actually will simplify a lot of this as well. Maybe eliminate the need for the popover. I don't know. We'll see. So, okay.
yeah. All right. So if that's all the questions, and by all means, if questions come up later,